Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at one of my favorite phones that have ever came out, and one of the phones I find myself recommending throughout this whole entire year. The last 2 weeks I've been making these videos, and that is the iPhone 14 Pro. This iPhone, in my opinion, is one of the best iPhones you can buy this year. I think it's a great mixture and a great combination of everything that's good within an iPhone. It doesn't have too many flaws in this year. There's a few, but I think this is a really well-rounded iPhone in this day and age, and I would highly recommend people to buy this phone. So before I continue on, if at any point you want to buy this phone, links will be down in the description below. You can get them from there for the cheapest prices I find, and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, looking on the outside of this particular phone, this iPhone came out back in 2022. So not that long ago, 3 years technically if we're looking at the year side, but more like 2.5 years right now for me making this video. And this iPhone on the exterior still holds up very, very well. And there's one thing that I like and I miss about the iPhone 14 Pro that's been removed on all the other iPhones since then. So looking at the display first, you are still getting a very good size 6.1 inch LTPO Super Retina XDR OLED display. Now, this panel still looks and feels very, very good. You're getting 120Hz ProMotion display on this thing. It's a very good looking display. There's not really that many things to complain about here within this type of panel. And I do think if you are going to go through and pick up a phone, you're not really going to notice too many issues or too many problems when you're going to go through and pick up this phone. Yes, it is a little bit outdated, and yes, it does have it's outdated in the sense that it has a little bit more bezel around it. You're not going to notice big differences between this thing or the iPhone 16 Pro. The bezel is the only thing you're going to notice that's kind of a little bit outdated. Other than that, still a very good looking phone, and it still gives you 2000 nits of brightness as of this point, which is amazing. So personally for me, that's a very, very nice thing. Now, the thing that kind of dates this phone a little bit, right? This is the last iPhone technically to have a lightning port. So that is one of the sadder aspects of this phone. If that bothers you a lot, then of course you can go for the iPhone 15 Pro. But I would probably tell you that even with something like this, the 14 Pro, for it being somewhat of a, newer phone with still giving you a lot of good features, I would probably be okay with giving up the, USB Type-C port going for Lightning if I could get this phone for less than $500. So around $400, I think that's a good deal. So for this thing, I can't really complain with that price tag. But you are still maintaining this reflective side around this phone. That has now been stripped on all the iPhones. So this was the last iPhone to basically bring that reflective side around it, the aluminum sideband that's reflective. I do kind of miss that. They are not like that anymore. On the back side of this phone, you are getting a frosted glass back, which looks amazing. I love having these frosted glass backs. They feel and look very, very good. You're getting that triple camera setup, the LiDAR sensor, MagSafe capability, wireless charging, IP certification. This phone feels and looks very, very good. And there's not really too many things that this phone is missing out on that the iPhone 16 Pro has. The only thing, there's a couple things. One, USB-C, like I mentioned before, which can be a big deal depending on who you are. This thing is also missing out on the action button and the camera button though. So those two buttons are also missing out on this phone. Is it a big deal to you? I will say for me personally, it is not a big deal at all. I barely care about my action button. I very rarely ever use my camera buttons on my other devices. So it's not really that big of a deal, but if it is a big deal to you, then you can always switch over to these other ones. So from that side, from the exterior, it still gets a thumbs up for me. From the price tag side, like I mentioned, this phone is still costing about $450 in the used market, Amazon market as well. So I still think that is a pretty decent price to pay for a device like this. It's not terrible. It looks pretty good for the most part. So that is a very, very competitive price tag to kind of think about when buying a device like this. Now moving on to the cameras, this device is still giving you a triple camera setup on the backside. So a 48 megapixel wide, 12 megapixel telephoto, then a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera, and it is also giving you a 12 megapixel wide-angle camera on the front. So with a lens like this and capability like this, I do think this is a very, very nice type of layout to have inside of this type of device. This camera, for the most part, still performs fairly well. 4K at 60 on the front, 4K at 60 on the back. And if you are going to go through and pick up a phone, I love being able to buy a phone like this that still holds up well. Now, when compared to the iPhone 16 Pro, of course, that phone is giving you more frames per second. You can film it at that maxed out resolution. You can do 4K 120 frames per second. The image quality, video quality, things like that are going to be overall better on the iPhone 16 Pro. right? So you're just going to have to kind of, think about that in the back of your head, that the iPhone 16 Pro will always have a better camera in almost every single way. But if that is not a big deal to you, if you don't even care about that kind of stuff, the 14 Pro's camera is still very solid. It is still a very good, solid sensor to have for the most part. And I do think that speaks a lot to me. So I'm totally fine with my 15 Pro camera. The 14 Pro camera is still very, very good as well. And it's not really that big of a difference, if I'm going to be honest, from the 16 Pro. So from that side as well, that kind of covers it up there. Now, another kind of thing to keep in mind here too is that the iPhone 14 Pro, number one, is still supported with software, but it's also still going to be supported with software for probably another 4 years. Like I could see this thing getting like 4 more versions of iOS. That is a large amount of iOS versions to have on this thing. It debuted with iOS 16. We're on iOS 18 right now. I would say easily another 4 versions. So like iOS 22 is when this thing could probably end up getting done support. So I think this thing still has a long ways to go. Again, it's not going to be like a perfect cycle. There's probably going to be some issues here and there. iOS 18 has been giving lots of phones, lots of people problems. But I do think within this type of device, you're still going to be getting a pretty okay type of experience when it comes down to it, when it comes down to that capability, from the software side. But I would say going one step further, right? One thing to keep in mind is that within this type of device, the battery life is still good, right? 3,200 milliamp hours, but it's not going to be like the best battery life of all time. When going to the 15 Pro and the 16 Pro, you're probably going to be noticing that the battery life on those devices are going to be significantly better. Now, is it going to be twice the amount of battery life? Probably not, but it is going to be a little bit of a bigger difference there. And you're also going to be lacking out on things like Apple Intelligence and those kinds of new features that the newer iPhones have. If that's a big deal to you, then you can always switch up to the 15 Pro. But if that is not a big deal to you, then you're probably going to be totally okay with this type of device too. Now, on top of that, when it comes down to the performance, this device is basically giving you that Apple A16 Bionic chip inside of it with 6 gigabytes of RAM. So with this type of device, that type of chipset is still pretty good, right? It's still a pretty good chipset. I think it performs very, very well. Even that amount of RAM. I think the RAM inside of this device is still pretty powerful. I think if you're going to go through and pick up a device, this type of phone, for the most part, is going to be giving you a pretty solid type of experience from the performance. Whether you're playing games, you're kind of multitasking between a lot of apps, you're watching videos, going on Instagram, whatever you're going to do, this phone is still going to be perfectly fine. The only thing I can even kind of think about is if you're playing super maxed out games all the time, maybe the 16 Pro will be better there. But for the average person, this phone is going to be giving you very good performance for the most part. So to sum it up, I definitely do think the iPhone 14 Pro is a very, very good phone, right? I think it's one of the better phones you can buy. And if you are going to go through and pick up a phone, this is a very good option. I think it's a great mixture of value and price and all that stuff. I do think if you are in the market though, if you have all the money, go for the 16 Pro or the 15 Pro, but the 14 Pro, there's a reason why I keep thinking about this phone. It is a very good option. I think it's a good successor coming from the 13 Pro. But now in 2025, this phone is going to be around that $400 price tag. And I think that makes this phone a really good deal for that particular price. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.